So
So
I have to ask, are you a
yeah,
Wolverine fan?
yeah.
Uh,
Well, I don't know how you
I,
even think about that question.
I don't know why it popped into my head, but you know. Hi guys, welcome to Talking Strongman. Today's guest is Patrik Baboumian. He's the German strongest man from 2011. You started off as a lightweight competitor. You won the lightweights in Germany multiple times, I believe, and
Yeah, two times.
two times, and you ended up winning the Opens as well. It's a pleasure to have you on. How's things?
Good, good. I'm good. Now I had a pretty long day, but now that I'm speaking with you, I'm feeling much better.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm making you feel good. You might change your mind in a minute if I start grilling you with some questions.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
Um,
That's what I would expect from a good interview partner, right?
Excellent. Good. Now, obviously, we go way back. We've competed against each other in the Champions League a number of times. A lot of people don't know that you competed in like high level strongman shows. You haven't competed at World's Strongest Man, but you have done multiple Champions League shows. You've been obviously Germany's Strongest Man. Are you still currently the German log record holder?
No, I think the record was broken. Like I don't know, in the last 3 or 4 years, I think somebody broke the heavyweight record that I had in Germany. But I had it for a very long time. I had it for like 6 or 7 years or so.
And what was your best log?
My best log here in Germany was 185 kilos,
Okay.
and then on the international stage it was 190 kilos.
Nice.
So that was my best competition log, and then I've been very close to 200 in training, but yeah, of course that doesn't count.
Training lifts don't count, as we know, as we all know. Yeah. No, I can't remember where we were. Was it Bulgaria we competed against each other in the Champions
Yeah,
League?
yeah.
Yeah.
Bulgaria was the
One of
fun competition where
Yeah.
you hurt your foot. I
Yeah,
remember.
yeah, I remember that. It was Irvin Katona was there, and Lalas, I think, was there as
Hmm?
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Lalas should have won that show, but he messed up one event, and Irvin won. And Lalas was so grumpy for the rest of the day, and Irvin just got hammered. I got hammered as well because I was just kind of drowning my sorrows from the foot injury, and I just remember us all being out. Irvin had this such deep kind of joyful laugh. It was just so good to be around him, and just Lalas was just sat there in the corner miserable because he hadn't won. But Lalas is actually a lovely guy, but sometimes back then when we didn't win, we get a bit sulky.
Yeah, that's exactly what I remember when I think back over this. I remember everybody having fun and then Lala's being pissed.
He's actually a really good guy. He really is. But obviously, when we're all in our prime, we all want to win. And he'd made a stupid mistake, I think, that cost him. And I think Irvin was just kind of teasing him all night about it as well to make things even worse. But it was definitely fun times. Anyway, I want to sort of. A lot of people know who you are. Obviously, you're quite well known for being the vegan strongman. You're probably or certainly one of the few that's at a higher level as well. That's vegan. So I want to talk about that before we kind of go into your strongman. We'll get that kind of out the way first, if you like, because obviously there's been a few things said online. Obviously there was the Joe Rogan podcast with Robert Oberst, and I know you were a bit upset about some of the comments on there. So I'll give you a chance to sort of firstly explain, I guess, because someone like myself, I'm not vegan. I'm a meat eater. I enjoy my meat, and sometimes from like my perspective, you get certain vegans, they try and force things onto kind of other athletes, and I'm quite a laid back character. I think, if you want to be vegan, great. That's a good choice for you. But if you don't want to be vegan, I've got no issues with that as well. And obviously, I'm a meat eater. And obviously for strongman, we all talk about the protein that's needed to build the muscle and recover. And, obviously there's other factors as well. But you've done extremely well. And I want you to kind of tell us, maybe go through your diet and tell us about what you eat on a daily basis and the little bit of beef, I guess, with Oberst and Joe Rogan.
Yeah, we can address all of that. I think I should maybe start with what I'm really trying to do or what I was trying to do when I was still competing and basically being pretty vocal about the way that I eat. So my main objective is really just to kind of show people that you have the alternative to eat a different way. So it's not really about telling anyone what to eat or what's right or wrong. It's really just to say, well, there's an alternative, and then you can just choose for yourself. So that's basically my mindset that I have. And then when it comes to so this is a very delicate kind of topic, because people have, for some reason, very strong feelings about it.
It's why I've got you on yourself, rather than kind of, and to be fair, it's something I'm not, I know about nutrition and stuff like that, but I wanted to get it from yourself rather than just, backstories that people pass around.
Exactly, and it's so important when you look at what happened with Robert Oberst and on the Rogan show. It's so important to basically, if it's something that is a little bit more complex, to really talk with the people themselves, because what happened there is they were just pulling some numbers from the web, from other people, and then basically kind of connecting that to me. I think they had some kind of deadlift world record in a small category that a different guy who is vegan holds, and they attributed that record to me, and then started thinking about how I would only deadlift like 600 pounds, which is not the case. Like I'm a pretty shit deadlifter, but I still had a plus 800 pounds deadlift on my prime. So
800 pounds is not shit, but it's
but I mean, compared to guys like you, and I mean, when you're competing with the opens. There are guys who can, who could always easily crush me on the deadlift. And when I say shit deadlift, what I really mean is that when it comes to something like a squat or something like a yoke, I can keep up with the bigger guys way better than when it comes to something like the deadlift. I'm just anatomically not really suited for it, or I'm just too lazy to train it properly. I don't know, one of those things. So. Yeah, so I think what's basically important in terms of the idea, if a vegan diet works or if it doesn't work, it's really that you shouldn't compare athletes to each other, because when you, like, for instance, a lot of people like to point out that I was never a top contender, which is the case. Yeah. But if you look at my anatomy, like I'm just not built to be.
Sure, you're naturally an under 105 athlete. You're not a super heavyweight.
So it would be silly to contribute the kind of level that I was at just on my vegan diet. So if you want to see if the diet works or if it doesn't, what makes way more sense is to just compare the athlete to himself. While with me, it's pretty practical, because I've been a meat eater when I started my career until 2005. Then I've been a vegetarian for 6 years, and then later in 2011 I switched to a vegan diet. So I have basically like whole chunks of my career being on each of the different alternatives, and that way you can pretty easily compare those different approaches.
Yeah,
and when you do that, for me, so basically my absolute prime with my heaviest deadlift, my heaviest squat, where I did the heaviest yoke I ever did, and all that stuff, that's been in 2016, and that's 5 years into being vegan. So that tells me that that I was not only, what a lot of people think, just holding on to the muscle that I built before I went vegan, but I was actually, getting stronger while I was on a vegan diet, and that's for half a decade. Then after 2016, I injured my tricep at the Locklift World Championships, and after that injury, I just retired from competitions. Although I have to say, it was not because of the injury; it was rather, I was planning the World Championships to be my last competition anyways. I was hoping that I would have a good result, sure. But the injury just made my retirement basically a little bit less fun, but it was.
Hey, shit happens in strongman, man. Did you see my last competition?
Yeah, I know that you injured your calf, right?
I tore my Achilles, so fully ruptured my Achilles on actually my favorite event as well. You know, I know you're good at the yoke, but I believed I was the absolute best in the world at the yoke. Certainly at one time. You know, Kiliaskovsky has taken it on another level. Guys like Rob Kearney, but at one time I believed I was the absolute best. So to almost finish my career on my favorite event was hard.
Yeah. So you know exactly what I mean. And for me, it was the log, and the log has always also been one of my favorites because I was good at it. So it's really not good.
It's that's strongman. we you know, vegan or not, we all get the injuries.
Yeah, exactly. So what I have to mention though is that with injuries and with the inflammation and all that stuff that is connected to it, when it comes to recovery and all these things. Actually, a vegan diet, I felt, also helped me a little bit to just basically minimize the recovery times.
Okay.
So for some reason, I cannot exactly lay out on the biochemical level what the mechanisms are, but for some reason, almost every athlete that you talk with who has been non-vegan before and tried a vegan diet says that the recovery and the inflammation levels, they react very positively to it. So that's something to think about if you're, recovering from an injury or something. It might make sense, even if you're not interested in, doing it for a long term or so. It might make sense to do it for a few weeks and then just see what it does with your body. Usually it really helps with these things.
Well, I think athletes in general now are taking diet on the whole a lot more serious. You know, a lot of guys are using nutritionists now. They're really taking their food seriously. So whether it's all about performance. It's all about making sure you recover from the workouts, you fuel the workouts, and you put the best food into your body. So whether it's vegan diet or not, if you're a serious athlete, you can't just be going eating tubs of Ben and Jerry's and fish and chips and stuff like that these days. You got to take your food seriously. That's
You can, but you won't get the optimal outcome. At the end of the day, I think we all been there at some point. Yeah, at least I was.
I think from when we started, it was a little bit more laid back with the nutrition. Now the guys take it extremely seriously. I've had some really good nutritionists on. It's always interesting talking to them because it's fascinating to. As an athlete, I say former athlete, I still train and, I'm still pretty strong and trying to get fitter at the moment. But even now, I like to learn new things and like to try and just expand my knowledge. So I find it fascinating talking to different people about various different methods that can just get that 1% better, because that's what we're looking for at top level. When people, I know if we go back to Joe Rogan, they said you weren't a top level strongman. To say you weren't a top level strongman is harsh. You maybe not like world elite in terms of the best guys, but you've competed on the international scene, and there's plenty of guys out there that have never managed to do that. You were an excellent squatter, excellent presser. You said your deadlift was weak, but an 800-pound or 360 kilo deadlift is certainly not weak by any means. So I almost get fed up of everyone's expecting everyone should be able to pull 400 kilos because it's.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. It's I think the problem is that there's a certain kind of fan culture that is developing in the last few years that I haven't seen like 10 years ago or something. Like 10 years ago, you would have people who are either really interested into strongman because they train themselves and they know exactly, how it feels and what goes into being on that level. And they, of course, appreciate what the athletes do. Or you would have just normal family people just going for the spectacle, basically.
Yeah.
But these days you have this weird, I don't know where they come from, if it comes, from people who have been friends of, I don't know, of boxing or something like that, because there's a lot of toxicity there as well. You see a lot of that or maybe it's just because it's online, and online kind of just makes people toxic.
Oh, I think there's positives and negatives to the online stuff. I do think the social media side of things has helped massively in terms of expanding people's knowledge, being able to physically see what's possible. You know, when I started, I went to the gym and there was a strong guy in the gym. He wasn't actually, no offense if he's watching, but he wasn't that strong. But to me at the time, he was the strong guy in the gym, and you sort of watch him and you pick his brains. Whereas now there's access to see you see everyone lifting on a daily basis. Just slide through Instagram and you see 400 kilo deadlifts, 300 kilo bench presses, ridiculous snatches, clean and jerks, and then some incredibly smart coaches and there's so much information out there that our knowledge has improved. But then you do get the negative side of it as well, where you get the, let's say, the general fan that doesn't know all that. They don't go too deep into the sport. They just like seeing the very top guys perform, when it's time to perform, but they don't understand the training that goes into it. They don't understand that actually there's only a small percent difference between all the athletes. And, but that small percent makes a big difference at that level. It really does. And I think then you get the negative comments like, oh, he can only pull 400 kilos. That's rubbish, blah, blah, blah. It's like saying a 10-second sprinter is rubbish. It's really not. It's just not at that world record level every week, but it's still, incredibly impressive. It's it's one of those things. But you got to take the good with the bad with all these things. And you've used social media exceptionally well. I mean, for, let's say, a not top level strongman, you're one of the most kind of followed, and you did strongman professionally. Do you still consider yourself a professional athlete? Or
yeah, I mean, I'm still taking my training serious. I don't have the same goals because I'm not competing, so I don't have to go, get my body to the limit that much that I was doing before. And my goals go more towards, I want to look good, I want to be healthy, and I want to have longevity. So that's what I'm going for. At the same time, I'm trying to be as strong as possible within that framework. Because I'm still kind of representing this idea that you can be strong on the kind of diet that I'm on. So I'm still trying to be worthy of being representing that. Yeah. But I don't have to go to the extremes. So when I think basically the following that I have and all the attention that I'm getting just comes from different streams. A huge part of it is because of the different approach that I take to diet, obviously. And it's also funny. Sometimes I get like a lot of smack from people saying, well, if he wasn't vegan, nobody would care. But and then I'm like, yeah, but that's what makes me like, that was my decision. That was what I did different.
I was going to say, was that a conscious decision on your part that you wanted to be something that would stand out?
Yeah, it wasn't so much that I was trying to stand out. It was because the considerations, like when I first went vegetarian, and it is basically the same mindset went into doing that next step and going vegan. It was just ethical considerations. I've always been very, connected to animals and wildlife and love nature and so on. So at the time when I made the decision, my ex-girlfriend and I, we lived basically at the border to a big forest, and we had a lot of wildlife there. So we would rescue a lot of wildlife, and we would put a lot of time and energy into, trying to help different animals. So at that point, I was just at one point thinking about, we had a baby raven at that point, and we spent like weeks and months trying to, get him on his feet and in a position where we could release him. And what I was thinking was, so you put all this time and energy into trying to help this one bird, and at the same time, within that time span, you're eating maybe like 20 chicken, like 20 other birds. I was just thinking, where's the sense in that?
Sure.
So that was just basically, for me, that was where my decision came from. It had nothing to do with the sport or with any expectations what it would do to my performance. Actually, at that time, my training wasn't really top priority for me, because I was getting my A degree on evening school. I had 2 different jobs, and then on the weekends I would also work as a bouncer in a disco. So the training was just, I was just trying to survive in terms of training. So when I made the decision, I was actually expecting my performance level to go down, because I bought into the basically the mainstream kind of knowledge that you need animal protein, you need meat to build muscle. So I wasn't expecting anything good, and then I was surprised that it actually worked very well. So I started becoming a little bit more vocal about it, but it was nowhere near where it was after going vegan, because the whole decision to do that next step and go vegan was just based on the success that I had as a vegetarian in 2011 when I won the title of Germany's Strongest Man. And I realized that through media and through all that attention that was coming to me at that point, I was actually helping other people to kind of make similar kind of decisions. So I was getting a lot of feedback by young guys telling me, well, I kind of have the same mindset, but I'm afraid if I speak my mind that my friends are going to laugh at me, which is of course exactly what happens.
Yeah.
You know,
It's like anything that we do that's different. People kind of they don't want to talk about it, or they just want to kind of blank it out. I guess it's I guess you see it with like Rob Kearney. He's and I used to never really understand with Rob why he was so vocal about being gay, because I'm very good friends with Rob, so I feel I can talk about him. And it wasn't until I sort of sat down and chatted to him, and I realized the shit he goes through on a daily basis of why he has to try and get that positive message and try and influence people that are struggling in that position to feel comfortable with themselves. And it's a horrible thing. I guess one of the worst things, especially with social media, is the online bullying that can go on, and people can get that sort of, I guess, the herd type mentality of just following the sheep, if you like, rather than trying something new. I've always sort of been fascinated by every aspect, especially when it comes to training. And obviously I just looked at Rob, I was like, it's just a really good athlete. I was like, I didn't get why it was all like the world's strongest gay stuff, but it wasn't until you sort of dig deeper into it and you realize, okay, I understand now. I see why he pushes it, and I feel for him, because honestly he's such a cool guy, and he has a lot of support, but then he gets a lot of hate as well, and it's just because of someone's sexuality, I don't get it. But and likewise for what we eat, I don't think it needs to be aggressive. If it's your choice, then great. And if you feel you can put it across in a positive way and make people understand that it's a healthier lifestyle, perhaps you won't convince someone like myself. I'm like well, you'll know yourself. I mean, my father was Persian, so you're brought up on kind of rice and meat type meals, and it's just in my blood, but it's in yours as well, I guess. And you kind of enjoy the kind of kebabs and the gourmet zabzi and those kind of Middle Eastern meals. They're heavily meat orientated, and if I'm totally honest, I just enjoy them. It was that kind of I was brought up on that lifestyle, but I'm very open-minded to listening about other ways, and even if it was for a performance or like I've got a friend that I train, actually. He's recently become vegan to lose weight, and he swears by it, and he has lost a lot of weight. He looks great, physically feels fit. So I do get it, and I think if people are willing to just be open-minded, and try things, like you say, it's when we're not willing to try things at all. That's when you kind of you keep yourself closed-minded, and you don't expand that knowledge. You see it so often with various different things, not just food, but it happens all the time. Anyway, talking of food, tell me, what was your diet like when you were competing in Strongman? I mean, now obviously you're a lot smaller now, but what were you eating on a daily basis? How many calories? What type of foods? How many meals?
Yeah, so I think calorie-wise, for the body weight that I had, I was around 300 pounds when I was. I think the heaviest was maybe a little bit more than 300 pounds, but that was basically.
You got pretty big. You got pretty big then.
Yeah, like in 2015-16, I was when you see pictures of then, like, I think my head was like double the size it is now. So it was definitely bigger than now.
Yeah.
So I think calorie wise, my diet was actually pretty typical for someone who looks like that and who packs that amount of mass. So I was moving somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 calories. That was basically my max. In terms of the macronutrients, I think, and this is actually really the important thing to understand when a lot of people kind of question, if it's possible to do what I did on a plant-based diet, is because they don't get that I was actually eating the same my food had the same nutritional value. Sure. It was just coming from different places. So I was very high in protein. I was around 300 and 350 grams. That was basically the top, almost 400 grams a day. Pretty high protein intake. To get that, what I would do is mainly, and this is the funny part. So a lot of those Persian dishes you were talking about, I mean, the kebab and that things aside, because that's just meat. But the stews, they have tons of stews, right? So horme sabzi, khoresht, and so on. It's rice dishes with stews, and the stews there is meat in them, but there's also tons of legumes that are a great protein source. So what I would do is I would eat basically all these things that I was eating before, all those yummy Persian. I was just taking away the meat. And the great thing about those stews is that all the taste really comes from all the other ingredients. So if you take away the meat, you don't really feel it that much. While, if you have a very meat-based kind of meal, of course, to take it away, then you have to replace it with something. Sure. But because of all those legumes and herbs and everything, I would just eat the same things just without the meat, and it would be vegan. So that's what I would mainly eat in solid meals. But what I have also done throughout my whole career, basically since I started Strongman, because I was always, small and I needed to compete against guys who were bigger. And so I had to always kind of try to get more calories into myself than I was really hungry for. What I would do is I would eat a lot of those calories, in liquid form. So shakes and smoothies and stuff like that. And that's still the case. Like even now that I'm not competing, I'm still doing the same thing, just because I think I'm inherently a lazy person. So if I can save time and energy on something, I will definitely go for it. And liquid calories are the easiest way to get your calories in. So instead of, preparing a meal, sitting down for half an hour and eating it, I just put everything in the blender and just, go for it.
Yeah, no, I think all of us have to sometimes get like the liquid calories, especially when we're trying to get those extra calories in. It's very few guys. When people ask me, how can I get more food in? I'm like, drink your food. It makes it that a little bit easier. So just in the morning, if you don't want to face like a big, huge bowl of oats and stuff, just blend it in a shake and get it down you. It's a little bit easier. You can have it on the go. It just makes it, you know yourself, and anyone sort of getting into Strongman, the eating is a hard part of it. Yeah, I've almost halved my calories right now. I'm currently on a 12-week transformation. Only 2 weeks in. I can't see anything yet, but I'm feeling better. But I've gone from about 6,000 calories to 3,500. It's a big drop, but still the same amount of meals. It's different food, and I already feel better, to be honest. It's it's hard to be 300 plus pounds. But I mean, you're what, 5'7"?
5'7". That's
a big man at 5'7" with 300-pound body weight.
Yeah, if you go beyond that, it's like that's where Rob is, for instance, right now. Rob Kearney, we talked about him. He's crazy big these days. The last few videos that I saw of him were really impressive. How much size he has gained, and he's not that much taller than I'm in. I don't know, maybe 2 inches or something like that. So I think you get. For me, there's a certain kind of threshold around the 300 mark where if I get bigger than that, it just costs you so much in your speed and endurance and, basically general ability to move that it's going to just cost you points on all these moving disciplines. So as a strongman, because it's such a balanced kind of sport and you need all different types of athletic ability, there's a limit to how big you can get, and for my frame, 300 pounds is pretty close to that limit.
I think it's an important thing to get across. It's very easy to go over that kind of tipping point. You get bigger and bigger and bigger to get that strength, but then you start sacrificing in certain areas. And if you're Hafthor Bjornsson, you can be 200 kilos, no problem. You can still be athletic, you can still move. But when you're 6 foot or 5'7", there's certain, the heaviest I ever was 170 kilos. That's 350 plus pounds. And my pressing was a little bit better. My squat was a little bit better, but everything else was worse. Everything else, even my deadlift was worse because I was struggling to get into position. Whereas I brought that weight down, my deadlift went up, my moving went up, my recovery went up. I brought a little bit off the pressing and the squat, but in terms of strongman performance, I was much better. So it is important to find that right weight for your frame.
I think for someone like you who is extremely explosive and also if you're in the right kind of shape, able to move very fast, that's what I always kind of saw in you, that a big strong athlete who is also able to be crazy quick in the moving disciplines, that really is going to hurt your results if you start getting slower. So so I think you really and the thing about strongman is that it's so it's going to definitely punish you and bite you in the ass if you do the slightest kind of mistakes. And sometimes when I think back of some competitions where I did like a minor mistake and it cost me like 2 places in the overall thing, which is the difference between being the strongest guy in your country versus just being third.
Absolutely. Small margins are massively important in all sports. It's all about that, but that's competition. That's why, it's always fun to sort of predict things and stuff like that, but you never know until you're in that arena. I've had many arguments with people saying, oh, if such and such was in that competition, it would have been different. It's like, you can't say that. You can only go on what was happening on the day. People say to me, oh, if you were in this comp, how do you think you would have done? I said, I can't say because I wasn't in it. And that's just, I don't like to take anything away from people when they're in a contest and they get their results. And it's easy to sit on the side as a fan and just watch it and say, if Zadrunas competed in that show, he would have won. You don't know that. You look at the history of sport, there's always shocks, there's always surprises, there's many, many factors that come into play with competition, and we all make mistakes. Every single, even the absolute best guys in the world make mistakes sometimes, and you've just got to make sure that you're as well prepared as possible and give the best you can on the day.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think strongman is actually a little bit special when it comes to that
unpredictability. Yeah,
predictability, because while other sports they have their standard kind of if you're a track and field athlete, exactly how the test is going to look like that you're going for. But with strongman, because we have all these disciplines and they basically, with every competition you get a new set of disciplines, that adds so much to that kind of chaos and unpredictability that it's really, I don't think there's any other sport that has that's very unique to strongman.
Even sometimes just going from competition to competition, you just get the different implements. It could be the same event, but with different, type of, say, a farmer's walk, but just built differently, and it can feel completely different. And if you just the Atlas stones, they can be different from set to set. Some of them are perfectly balanced. Some of them, the weight shifts one side, and that's the raw kind of awkwardness of strongman, and it makes it fun. And then you have the events like keg toss. You can be a brilliant thrower, but you could throw one that just doesn't quite. It goes high enough, but it doesn't go over. and then you waste that energy and you panic, and little things like that can always affect a competition. Just that wrong setup on something, and then obviously there's the events that are just completely random sometimes that will totally throw people. It makes it fun.
Yeah. I can remember some crazy things in competitions in China that I've done. Like in 2007, I did my first lightweight world championships in China, and they had Atlas stones, but instead of a square, a sphere shape, the Atlas stones were basically shaped like bowls, like big bowls. So you kind of had to,
like half a stone, kind of.
Yeah. Weird kind of shape. I can maybe, I don't know, I can maybe send you some pictures, and then we can actually show it once you edit everything. So it was a very weird shape. And actually, for me, that was a plus, because most, Atlas stones are usually a very bad discipline for me, because being a smaller athlete, my arms are short as well, so I can't really grab the things right. So usually I struggle with them, but because of that weird shape, I could actually grab the things way better than your normal Atlas stones. So for me it was okay, but for most of the athletes it was terrible.
They do some very strange competitions in China. I've been 4 times to China, and it's not my favorite place to go, I'll be honest. I love traveling. I love seeing all different places around the world, but China's a strange one. There's some wonderful parts and people, but there's also some very strange customs. And then I've done a few competitions that I just wasn't happy with what I saw there. I mean, you're an animal lover, and I saw some horrible things, to be honest. And that's one of the things that I don't like about going over there. But
although I have to say, you have to keep in mind a lot of the stuff, like for instance, when it comes to what kind of animals you eat, right? So a lot of the stuff that you see there that you might react to emotionally just really comes from a place because it's a very kind of exotic culture to us, and we're not used to seeing them.
Sure.
But if you just go to very basic logics, for instance, there's an emotional impact in seeing animals that we consider as pets, like cats and dogs, being treated badly and then slaughtered and eaten. But if you think about it, there's really no difference between those animals and the animals that we consider food. So I think a lot of the kind of view that we have on different cultures comes really just from what we're used to in our own culture.
Of course,
that's one thing. But what we can agree on is the equipment was definitely crazy, a crazy challenge in China. I can remember that a few times I almost I think in 2013 there was this weird kind of world championships where you could nominate. It started as a group kind of competition, and you could nominate members of your group to basically kick them out.
Yeah, you were there, right? I was there. I was the captain of one of the teams. Zadrunas was the other captain. And,
exactly.
Yeah, so, very strange. It was like a TV show, like a reality,
like Big Brother or something.
Yeah, and then every time if you lost the event, then you had to boot one of the members of your team out. Yeah, it was a hard job.
Do you remember that kind of tug of war that they had?
Yeah.
I almost broke my neck doing that because I think at one point the other team, they just let go. And so we won the thing, but I just went flying and just almost broke my neck with it. Yeah.
Was that the same year we had to, as a team, you had to hold this bridge up, and then you had one member had to carry a stone over the bridge. So there's 6 guys, I think 3 guys each side or 4 guys each side, and you had to lift this bridge, and then one member had to pick up a stone, go up the ramp, across the bridge, down the ramp, and load it onto something. And you're just there holding it. It's getting heavier and heavier. Every step they take, your grip's going to go. It was some weird events they came up with.
Yeah, that was a different year, and I'm happy it was, because what I saw was crazy enough. But I think for them, they basically made kind of a gladiators kind of show out of it, where it looked like they don't really bothered if you would survive the whole thing or not.
Oh, I remember one event they did. So it wasn't the athletes that suffered, but it was like a safe lift. You ever seen the safe lift? So they made this.
Yeah.
It was like a traditional Chinese ornament, I guess, and they'd made two of them, and one of them broke. And the producer of the show was so angry at the guy that that had made these in front of all the strongmen. He's there just beating the crap out of this guy. And we're all just like stood there watching, thinking, "Oh my god!" Yeah, it was very strange. I've experienced some weird times in strongman. I got to say, there's been some amazing times, but there's been some strange ones too, and they nearly always happen in China. Oh man. Anyway, what got you into training? What was it that kind of, because you've been, I read up somewhere, I think from a very young age, you've been interested in either bodybuilding or training in general and strength. So take me back to the beginning. What was young Patrik kind of fascinated about?
Yeah, so I was 14 years old when I started working out. So mainly at that time, I was a fan of professional wrestling. So,
like all of us back then.
Yeah, maybe. So I was a fan of that, and I had a friend at school who was also a fan. So we would actually meet up and kind of, have our own show kind of fights and, try to mimic all those different, weird movements that they do and all that stuff.
We're talking like Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior and these kind of guys, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're talking about. So we were doing all that stuff, and we were actually dreaming of doing that while we were, getting bigger. So at one point we just realized we needed to pack a little bit more muscle. So that was kind of the first step where we. And I have to say, I was already training at home, but that was when we decided to go to an actual gym and start training there. So I think when I was 14 years old, I was training at home, and then I was 15 or so when we actually started training in a gym. So that was kind of the initial thing. But when it comes to my fascination with strength and with muscle, that actually goes way back to my childhood, actually. One of the few memories that I have of my father, and that's because he died when I was very young. So my father died when I was 4 years old, but I have memories of him with my mom watching the Hulk TV series with Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah.
So and I would be terrified. Like, this is 3-year-old Patrik under the table screaming and terrified because Lou is hulking out, and that was kind of that kind of the whole look. I mean, Lou Ferrigno was one of the top bodybuilders at that time. So this bodybuilding look kind of just burned itself into my memory and into my psyche, and was always with me. So as a child, even before I started training, I would, go and buy bodybuilding magazines and read them and kind of, be fascinated by what you can do with the human body to, get it to that kind of shape.
Yeah.
So that's really where I think the whole fascination came from. That was the groundwork basically for me. Then later on, actually starting to train myself.
Do you know Lou Ferrigno competed at the first World's Strongest Man?
Yeah, I know that, and I actually learned that, I think, just 10 years ago or so.
Really?
Yeah, I was doing a documentary on strength training with a German guy, camera guy, and it just started as a very small project. It was just basically about my own story and a few other athletes, and then at some point he actually interviewed Lou. And that's when I learned that Lou was actually in the 1977 first World's Strongest Man, and it was very interesting to see that. And then Franco Colombo was also in that, and it was pretty awesome. Then later on to go back and watch those, the historic footage and everything, and to see talking of strange implements to see what those guys were doing, because that was the beginnings of all these things. And
Absolutely.
like the keg lift, do you remember the keg lift when they weren't actually doing the cross grip, but they were doing it like
trying to
this?
press the keg and it's wobbling all over the place. I actually think it would be really cool to do a competition with the original 10 events and see how the guys do now. I love watching all the old stuff. Obviously, I watch a lot of it for some of the videos that I do, but I've always been a massive Strongman fan, so I've watched them all many times. And I think it would be quite a cool contest to do the original World's Strongest Man events and see how the guys today cope with those, strange events, because it's very different now. The sport's kind of completely evolved, but it would be a fun show to do, I think.
Yeah, that would be an awesome idea. And also, some of those guys were actually crazy strong compared to even to now. Like Franco Colombo, it was insane. He was
pound for pound. He was ridiculously strong. He's probably one of the smallest guys ever to compete at the World's Strongest Man. But on the static events, he would hold his own. Had a terrible injury on the fridge carry, but he was genuinely powerful man.
Yeah.
And some of the, Bruce Wilhelm, Don Reinhardt. Don Reinhardt was a beast. That guy lifted something. I think he still, up until a few years ago, still had the squat world record, the raw squat world record. He genuinely, absolute beast. Some of those guys, unbelievable athletes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's the plans for you going forward? Obviously, this year has been strange, but I know you say you do a lot of motivational talks and things like that. Obviously, you've not been able to do them this year. It's been a rough year, I guess. But you said to me before we kind of came on, you've been very busy with other things. So what's the focus right now?
Yeah, so I'm feeling very lucky compared to a lot of people who are really suffering on the the kind of circumstances that we're all on. Most of the work that I was doing before the whole pandemic was public speaking, basically. So I was speaking on vegan events, but also sometimes on sports events like the FIBO and stuff like that. I would get booked for speaking gigs, and that has been completely canceled. So basically, 100% of the income from there is just gone.
Sure.
But I was able to compensate it with a lot of other things that I'm doing right now. So right now I'm doing, and this is not really too much on the commercial side, but I'm doing a kind of a theater project that I'm part of, which is a part of my basically my aspiration to develop into acting. So I'm doing all kinds of smaller acting jobs, like just to develop that skill. So that's one thing that I'm doing, and then another thing that is actually a big chunk of my energy goes into that is a comic book project that I have.
Okay.
That was initially the idea was to make a film, and I was actually writing a script for a film until I realized that film would cost a terrible ton of money that I didn't have. So I had this idea to make a comic book. And before doing the film, I made a Kickstarter campaign to finance the whole thing, and we actually financed it, I think, within 3 days or so. We had the money that we needed, so it did pretty well. And right now we're working on getting that done until the end of the year. So that's like maybe 80% of my time. And then on sides of that, I'm also collaborating with different companies who are working in the same kind of field that I'm working. So in the cross section between the fitness industry, the vegan lifestyle, and all that stuff, I'm collaborating with different companies to helping them business wise, and getting paid for that. So it's like it's a mix of very different things with where I need very different skills which is sometimes very exhausting because your brain has to go to very different places.
Yeah,
And
well, it's quite diverse, and it's quite interesting talking to listening to you about the acting side of things. Obviously, there's a few strongmen that have gone into acting. I've been in a few films myself, and it's it's an area not a lot, but there's a good amount of guys go into. You say with the comic book, can you give us any kind of little hints on what it's about, or?
Of course. So it's like the basic idea and everything is actually you can find it on Kickstarter. If you look for Earth Raiser, that's the name of the project.
Okay.
Yeah, like raising the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea comes from like there are certain kind of archetypes and images that I'm carrying in my brain since my childhood. One of them is the Hulk.
Yeah.
And then another archetype is Atlas, who is shouldering the Earth. And so Earthraiser is actually it's kind of trying to make a connection to the mythical figure of Atlas, who is raising the Earth, basically.
Interesting, though. It's all quite strength based, kind of
Yeah, of course. So if I do something, I always put a part of myself into it.
Sure.
So in that way, there is also huge chunks of autobiographic stuff that goes into the story. But the main idea or the main motivation behind the story is really that I was trying to come up with a story to kind of communicate my own motivation for how I see the world and why I'm having the outlook on animals and that stuff that I have. But I wanted to make a story that wasn't about and I wanted to have it as a superhero story because I've been a comic book fan of superhero comics, Hulk and so on since my childhood.
So I have to ask: are you a Wolverine fan?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how you even think about that question.
I don't know why it popped into my head, but
I actually am, and you know why? So that's a thing that a lot of people don't actually know. So one of the reasons that got me I was an X-Men fan before I became a Wolverine fan. But I really got into Wolverine when I actually found out that he was the only, or at least the only small superhero that is originally meant to be very short.
Yeah, from the comics, he's really short, isn't he?
He's actually 3 inches. I'm 3 inches taller than he is. So he's meant to be very short.
So they shouldn't have had Hugh Jackman then. They should have had you for the role.
Yeah, it was a huge mistake to go with you. He was obviously brilliant in the role, but anatomically it would make sense to go with a short guy. Maybe I think it would be awesome if you would take a bodybuilder or someone who is actually packs the kind of muscle to look exactly like the comic book hero. But like Lee Priest would have been. Yeah. I think absolutely insane as Wolverine, but nobody asked me. So back to my
maybe for one of the future ones.
Yeah. So back to my own. So because nobody asked me, I figured I have to make my own comic book hero. So I wanted to make this whole thing, but I didn't want to make it about a vegan superhero because I figured nobody wants to read that. And at the end of the day, I want people who are, I don't want vegans to read the book because, of course they can read it, but my target audience is people who, think differently, to read the book and maybe be inspired or, to kind of reach out to those people who are not already having a very similar outlook on the world that I have. So to kind of get to that point, I needed to make this hero in a way that people could, your general audience could kind of connect with him. And I knew that if you make a vegan superhero, like the general audience is not going to connect with, because you want the hero to be, close to yourself.
I mean, you say that. What about Popeye? He must have been vegan.
He was just eating way too much spinach. That doesn't mean anything.
I'm just messing with you. It's been really fun actually talking to you. You're a very thoughtful guy. You can see you've got loads going on. And last thing I want to say, because you've been very smart to turn yourself into a professional athlete. It's funny because we started off with like yourself talking about we were talking about Robert Oberst, and I think yourself and Robert are two of the best professional athletes in terms of you've marketed yourselves in a certain way, and you've been able to make a career out of this without winning major titles, which is an impressive skill in itself. So what I want to ask is, like, for anyone out there that wants to use like the gym and training and stuff like that to try and make a living, what advice would you give them?
I would definitely say that you have to find the areas where you can, let's do it on the example of myself. So for me, I always knew that I was not built to be like top notch. I didn't have the physical ability to be as dominant an athlete as I would have liked to be. So if I wanted to have an edge on my competitors, I had to find something else. So when it came to the competition, that something else meant that I was trying to work out harder than them, that I was trying to be smarter with some things, decisions that I was doing, that I was staying away from, alcohol and drugs and partying and all that kind of stuff. So I had a very, very, very clean kind of lifestyle. And that's not because I don't like to party or anything. It was just because I knew I couldn't afford to lose even a little bit of the performance because the other athletes were so ahead of me. So that was what I was doing as an athlete. But then outside of the athletic battlefield, there is also the battlefield of life or business, and so there you can basically do the same thing. You have to find for yourself where you have an edge or you have a potential edge in which areas you could be better than the others, and then you just cultivate those areas and try to find your own niche or try to find your own way. And I think what really holds a lot of people back, or what makes it harder for a lot of people, is that they're looking for a template. Like they would, if they look at Zydrunas or they look at somebody like you, and then they try to mimic that, but that's not going to make the best out of the skill set that they have. That's not going to make the best out of, the circumstances that they have. So I was always, I guess, pretty smart about really analyzing my strengths and weaknesses and then trying to make the best out of my own situation. Yeah. And that's a skill that's going to help you everywhere in life, if it's business or sports or whatever it is. So
I totally agree with you. It's funny because you see a lot of people, especially these days, they want to be the next Eddie Hall. But Eddie Hall is Eddie Hall. He's successful because he's himself. He's created a character, but it's just an enhancement of himself. Whereas some people try and do it, and it's, Eddie's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. Same with Oberst. Oberst is a smart guy. He knows what he's saying. He knows how to get a reaction, and he knows how to get seen. And then if that's not you, there's no point in then trying to do that. It's you got to do. I do my own thing that's completely different to everyone else, and it's actually, when I was competing, I didn't, I was just focused on competing, whereas now it's a bit more business orientated and developing the sport and things like that, but just doing it in my own way. I sort of the Uncle Oz thing and stuff like that. I'm not the brash, aggressive. Well, I'm aggressive when I compete, I guess, but most of the time pretty laid back and kind of quiet there. So it's finding your thing, and like you did very successfully. So anyone out there, just focus on your skill set, being yourself, and doing what you need to do to get seen. It's not always about talking rubbish and just kind of being loud. So, you look at Zydrunas. Zydrunas is just very, very good. He went down that approach of I'm just going to be the best. And there's everyone's slightly different. They have their own thing, they have their own niche, and you can see it in other sports as well. And obviously, the people like Eddie or the Conor McGregor, if you like, if that's your character, great, go with it, but don't force it if it's not. That's probably the best advice I can give anyone. And sounds like you're giving the same.
Absolutely.
Patrik, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. If people want to find you and follow you on I know you've got your YouTube page and Twitter, Instagram, we'll tag them in for you. We'll put them in the description below. I will hopefully see you soon, my friend. Thank you again for coming on. Guys,
likewise.
I hope you have enjoyed this Talking Strongman episode. It's been really nice. He's been so well lit. There's good quality sound. It makes my job much easier. Actually, it makes Liz's job much easier. She does all the editing afterwards, so she hasn't got so much work to do today. Right, take care, and we'll be back with more Talking Strongman soon. While you're here, guys, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my awesome strength content.